to start understanding things aren't working right. And maybe it is, I don't know what it is, but I can tell you it's pretty dispiriting. Also in the university context, because the U.S. is dotted with think tanks, and the think tanks are all pretty much neocon oriented at the major universities, and it hasn't really broken through that this makes no sense. Yeah, I'm sorry to say it. I wish I could tell you, behind the scenes, everyone knows, but it's a pretty low level discussion right now.
Because the other thing is, I also read some of the reports that come from these think tanks, and two things come through to me always these very complicated geopolitical chess games, which I always find fantastic in themselves, yes. But also very little discussion ever of economics. When they talk about these chess games, the assumption is, yes, we can do all of these things, but very little understanding. The economics is ultimately what determines everything, and what also places limits on what you can do. It's as if these chess games are played in some kind of isolation.
There's a huge naivete and maybe a kind of underlying racism, though it's not quite the right term. It's a little sharp, but there is a deep feeling that whatever China did, it must have cheated to do it. And that's almost taken for granted. It's the weirdest thing. I've been traveling to China for 40 years now. A lot of Chinese students, a lot of supervised dissertations and research projects and so on. And I've watched the hard work, the intelligent planning, the incredible foresight that China has shown for 40 years in this economic success. And yet the line, it's all dismissed. And it's dismissed by, even the academics. And so this is part of the self-aggrandizing fallacy that prevents the clear thinking. Well, all we have to do is turn off this switch or stop them from cheating on this, and then the game is up for them. And that's why you see all these naive moves of, we'll put on a sanction here, we'll stop them from getting semiconductors here, we'll squeeze Huawei here. And it's unbelievably naive, but it's the similar motivation to the sanctions against Russia or the sanctions against Venezuela, which is it starts with the kind of arrogance that we're the only ones that know how to do anything. So all we have to do is flip a switch and the others just collapse. And they forget there's actually real people, smart people all over the place that know how to do a lot of things, and that technology flows. Technology is shared. Technology moves in all different directions. And this is the biggest single misunderstanding of the U.S. scene right now, is the sense we're still in charge because we're the ones that know how to do things. And we see every day it's all bollocksed up.
I have to say very briefly that if you go to late imperial Britain, it was not exactly the same. The British understood that they were, that they were being overtaken, and they looked for friends. There was even a famous speech by, Joseph Chamberlain, that we're the weary atlas. We can't carry the burden of the globe anymore. He was the colonial secretary at the time. There doesn't seem to be anyone like that in the United States with his kind of power at the moment. And, one wonders why that is.
I read, I've been rereading Robert Kagan, the great ideologue of the neocons. Really a horrible book, 2018. I think we've discussed it. The Jungle Grows Back. And it's about U.S. Liberal hegemony and all the rest. But I understand from rereading it where the complete misperception comes in, which is that the U.S. the world for the U.S. is overwhelmingly the U.S., and then there's Europe, and then there's Japan, and the rest is a kind of haze, which doesn't quite have the right to be there. And China's, where they come from, but no deep recognition that the West, so-called, is 15% of the world population in a world where technology is going everywhere very, very quickly. And I was in India just after China, and for a G20 meeting, and in the pavilion was demonstrations of India's digital things, and I was saying, God, I wish I could do this stuff in New York City. What they're doing out in the rural areas of India with their digital lockers and their e-payment systems and everything else is absolutely remarkable. And this is the real point of everything that we're seeing. There isn't a Western-led world anymore. There is a world, and the technology is flowing everywhere, and you can find it in remote villages in Africa as well, though still lagging far behind. But you definitely see it in China, it's daily life. In India, the breakthroughs are coming quickly. That's the real world. That's the geopolitical world, because that's the real world. And that's why everything else about we will write the rules of the game, which Americans still say openly, is just bizarre, actually.
Bizarre. There is the real world, and there is the world. It's not the West; it's the world altogether. We've come up to our 30 minutes, Professor Sachs. Can I say it was an amazing program? Thank you very much for joining us, Alex. And
I just want to know, Professor Sachs, can I shoot 2 messages your way?
Absolutely.
Okay. 2 or 3 messages. A lot of people are asking, from P. Cooper, for example, how far away is the new fiat system? And Jungle Jin wants to know if central banks like the ECB can actually fail.
Central banks can print money, but if their money fails, they get hyperinflation when they do so. So there have been a lot of failed central banks in history. I've dealt with a number of them, trying to resurrect them. We're within 10 years of a new international monetary system. We see it taking shape before our eyes. The dominance of the dollar, which is a lot of the American perception of its dominance of power, is an obsolescing bargain, as we say in economics. It's going away. My colleagues think, 30 or 40 years. I'd say less than 10 years, because the moves geopolitically combined with the technological transformation to digital currencies, meaning you don't have to go through SWIFT. We're going to have central bank digital currencies, and we're going to have a multi-currency world. My guess is within 10 years, we're in a very different international monetary system.
All right. And Alan wants to know, why do Eastern countries not dump the dollar, like Syria, Lebanon, Egypt, and so on?
They're going to. This is happening before our eyes, actually. There's more and more bilateral settlements in rupees, in rubles, in renminbi. It's happening very fast. Again, there are established systems and so on, but if it's a guess, is this closer to 30 or 40 years, or is this closer to 5 to 10 years? I definitely give it the 5 to 10 year period. And like in so many other things, the renminbi is going to be a big part of this story.
All right. Fantastic. Professor Jeffrey Sachs, Director, Columbia University, the Center for Sustainable Development. I will have a link to that website in the description box down below, as well as a pinned comment. Thank you very much, Jeffrey Sachs, once again, for your time. It is very appreciated. Thank you, Alexander. Thank you to all our moderators and to everyone who watched us on this live stream. Take care.